Morning arrived beneath a sky washed clean by the night's gentle breeze. Sunlight filtered through the curtains, filling Ava's apartment with a quiet warmth. On the dining table, Emily's leather notebook lay beside the small crescent-shaped brass key. Neither had moved since the night before. Yet somehow, everything had changed. Ava carefully slipped both items into her shoulder bag. Lucien stood beside the doorway. As always, he had arrived early, not because anyone asked him to, simply because he knew she would be ready. Ethan walked in carrying 2 cups of coffee.
Does nobody in this group ever sleep?
We can sleep after we solve Emily's mystery?
Thomas laughed as he grabbed his jacket.
Emily would have approved of that answer.
Half an hour later, their SUV left town and headed toward Blackwood Manor once again. Morning mist drifted lazily between the trees. The road through Moonlight Forest looked peaceful, almost inviting. Ava opened Emily's notebook. The first page still held the list she had written the night before. Victor's ring, Emily's letter, the greenhouse, 4 flower pots, the crescent key. Look at what everyone is protecting. She quietly read the last sentence again, then closed the notebook.
I still think Emily wanted us to begin with the greenhouse.
Thomas nodded from the driver's seat.
So do I.
Lucien looked out the passenger window. The forest rolled endlessly beside them, bright, calm, nothing like the dangerous place it had once seemed. Then he noticed movement, a flash of silver between the trees.
Thomas, stop.
The vehicle slowed immediately. Everyone looked toward the woods. Standing between 2 tall pines was the silver wolf, perfectly still. Its pale coat shimmered beneath the morning sun. Golden eyes watched the vehicle without fear, without aggression. Lily whispered instinctively.
It is back.
No one moved. The wolf simply stood there, waiting. Then its gaze shifted, not toward Ava, not toward Lucien, not toward Thomas, only Ethan. For several silent seconds, neither looked away. Something passed between them. Recognition, not of faces, but of something much older. The wolf slowly turned, walked a few steps into the forest, then stopped. Looking back once, waiting, Ethan opened the passenger door, without hesitation.
It is asking me to follow?
Thomas immediately reached for his arm.
You don't know that.
Ethan shook his head. His voice remained surprisingly calm.
I do?
Lucien stepped out beside him. His eyes never left the wolf. There was no challenge in its posture. No warning. No hunting instinct, only patience. Lucien quietly spoke.
It isn't luring us. It is inviting you.
Ava looked between them.
Could it be another trap?
Lucien slowly shook his head.
If it wanted to attack, it would have done so already.
The silver wolf took another few steps deeper into the trees, then waited again, exactly as before. Ethan smiled faintly. For reasons he couldn't explain, he wasn't afraid. Not even a little. He felt expected. Thomas finally sighed.
We're not letting you go alone.
Ethan nodded. I know. The group left the road together. Branches swayed gently overhead. Birdsong echoed through the morning air. The forest seemed unusually alive, as though it had been waiting for this meeting. The silver wolf walked ahead at an unhurried pace, never running, never disappearing from sight. Every few moments, it looked back, making sure Ethan was still following. After nearly 10 minutes, Lucien suddenly stopped. He frowned slightly.
What is it?
Lucien watched the wolf carefully, then looked toward Ethan.
It isn't leading all of us, it is leading him.
Almost as if it understood, the silver wolf stopped once more. It looked directly at Lucien. Their eyes met for a long, silent moment. There was no hostility, no challenge, only quiet understanding. Lucien slowly nodded, almost unconsciously.
We'll stay behind.
The wolf calmly turned back toward Ethan, as though that had been the answer it expected. Ethan glanced toward Ava.
We'll be right here.
He smiled reassuringly, then continued walking. The silver wolf disappeared with him between the towering pines. Their figures gradually faded into the morning mist, until only silence remained. Ava watched the empty trail. Something deep inside told her the answers they had been searching for were waiting at the end of that path. She simply didn't yet know how much those answers would change Ethan's life forever. The silver wolf moved silently through the forest. Its paws barely disturbed the fallen leaves. Every few moments, it slowed, waiting for Ethan. Never once looking frightened, never once looking hurried. Ethan followed without hesitation. Behind him, Lucien, Ava, Thomas, and Lily remained several dozen yards away, close enough to help, far enough to respect whatever was happening. Morning sunlight filtered through the towering pines. Thin beams of gold painted the forest floor. The farther they walked, the quieter the woods became. Even the birds seemed unwilling to interrupt. Ethan wasn't sure why, but every turn felt familiar, not because he remembered this place, because somehow it felt like it remembered him. The wolf stopped beside a fallen oak. It looked back. Its golden eyes rested on Ethan once more. Then it continued. Lucien quietly raised one hand behind them. The other stopped.
Why are we stopping?
Lucien never took his eyes off the wolf.
Look!
The silver wolf had stopped again. This time, it wasn't looking at Ethan. It was looking directly at Lucien. Neither moved. The forest became completely still. Lucien slowly lowered his shoulders, a gesture every wolf instinctively understood. Not submission. Respect. The silver wolf blinked once, then calmly turned away. Lucien smiled faintly, almost to himself.
She is asking for trust.
Thomas looked surprised.
You can tell that?
Lucien nodded.
Wolves don't always speak, but they always communicate.
He looked toward Ethan.
She wants him, not us.
Ava frowned. You really think he'll be safe? Lucien answered without hesitation.
If she meant him harm, she would have never waited on the road.
He paused, watching the wolf disappear briefly behind another stand of trees.
She has been protecting him, not hunting him.
Ava slowly relaxed. Deep down, she realized Lucien was right. The silver wolf had appeared many times, yet no one had ever been attacked. Ahead, Ethan finally noticed the others had stopped. He turned around.
Everything okay?
Lucien nodded.
Go. We'll follow.
Ethan looked uncertain, but Lucien smiled reassuringly.
Sometimes, the hardest thing you can do for someone is give them space.
Ethan understood. At least enough not to argue. He nodded once, then continued after the wolf. The distance between them slowly grew. 30 feet, 50, 100. Still, the wolf never let Ethan lose sight of it. Whenever the trail curved, it paused. Whenever thick brush blocked the view, it waited, almost as though making certain he would never feel lost. Behind them, Thomas folded his arms.
I've spent years thinking that Animal was watching us.
He smiled quietly. Maybe it was watching him. Lily looked toward the disappearing figures.
Do you think Ethan knows where he is going?
Ava gently shook her head.
I don't think he does. I think someone else does.
Several more minutes passed. The forest gradually changed. The younger pines gave way to enormous ancient oaks. Moss covered old stone walls. Pieces of weathered fencing appeared beneath climbing ivy. Signs that people had once lived here, long ago. The silver wolf finally slowed. Its pace became almost hesitant. It glanced toward a clearing ahead, then back at Ethan. For the first time, Ethan noticed something unexpected. The wolf wasn't leading him anymore. It was preparing him. Beyond the trees, an old wooden cabin slowly emerged from the morning mist. Its roof had partially collapsed. The porch leaned slightly to one side. Wildflowers surrounded what had once been a carefully tended garden. Ethan stopped walking. His heartbeat quickened. He had never been here as an adult. Yet, a memory stirred somewhere deep inside. Almost forgotten, almost impossible. The silver wolf quietly walked onto the porch, then turned, waiting for him to take the final few steps alone. The cabin stood quietly beneath towering oak trees. Morning light filtered through broken branches overhead. Wild vines climbed the weathered walls. Nature had slowly reclaimed what people had left behind. The silver wolf stopped on the porch. It didn't enter. It simply waited, watching Ethan. Ethan climbed the 3 worn wooden steps. Each board creaked beneath his feet. The sound stirred something buried deep inside his memory. He reached out. His fingers brushed the old porch railing, smooth, worn. As though countless small hands had once slid across the same wood. Without warning, a memory surfaced. A much smaller hand, his own. Running along this very railing while laughter echoed through the yard. He stopped breathing for a moment.
I've been here?
The words escaped almost as a whisper. The silver wolf remained perfectly still. Its golden eyes never left him. Ethan slowly pushed open the front door. It resisted slightly, then swung inward with a long, tired creak. Dust floated through shafts of sunlight. The cabin smelled of cedar, old books, and time. Furniture still stood where it had been left. A rocking chair, a stone fireplace, a faded quilt folded neatly across a sofa. Nothing looked abandoned, only waiting. Ethan walked farther inside. Every step awakened another fragment of memory. A rainy afternoon, a warm fire. Someone humming softly while preparing dinner. He stopped beside the fireplace. Resting on the mantel was a framed family photograph. The colors had faded almost beyond recognition. A young man, a smiling woman. Between them, a little boy with dark hair, no older than 5. Ethan slowly picked up the frame. His hands trembled.
That is me?
The realization settled over him quietly. This wasn't merely an old cabin. This had once been home. Outside, the silver wolf finally stepped through the doorway. It crossed the room slowly. Its movements were almost reverent, as though every corner carried memories of its own. The wolf stopped beside the rocking chair. Its nose brushed gently against one worn wooden arm. Then it closed its eyes. Ethan watched silently. The animal wasn't exploring. It was remembering. A tear unexpectedly rolled down Ethan's cheek. He hadn't cried in years. Not when he left home. Not when he buried old questions. Not even when he convinced himself they no longer mattered. But here, inside this forgotten cabin, every unanswered year suddenly returned.
Why?
His voice cracked. Why did everyone leave? The silver wolf opened its eyes. It looked at him with unmistakable sadness. Then, very slowly, it stepped into the patch of sunlight spilling across the wooden floor. The morning breeze fell silent. Leaves outside stopped rustling. Even the birds seemed to disappear. Light surrounded the silver wolf, not dazzling, gentle, like moonlight lingering after dawn. Its powerful body slowly changed. Silver fur faded, shoulders narrowed. The wolf shape softened into that of a woman. Long silver blonde hair fell across her shoulders. Her eyes remained the same warm shade of gold. Calm, kind, filled with years of quiet sorrow. She stood barefoot on the old wooden floor, looking at Ethan exactly as she had looked at him on the forest road. Not as a stranger, as a mother. Ethan couldn't move. The photograph slipped from his hands onto the sofa. He stared at the woman before him, searching her face, searching memories he had almost forgotten. Then, very softly, she spoke.
You've grown taller than your father.
The voice. He remembered the voice. Not clearly, not completely, but enough. Enough to bring back bedtime stories, warm hands, gentle lullabies, and a childhood that had disappeared far too soon. Ethan's lips trembled. He could barely force out the word.
Mom?
The woman's eyes filled with tears. She smiled through them.
Hello, Ethan. I've missed you every single day.
Outside, far beyond the cabin, Lucien, Ava, Thomas, and Lily quietly waited beneath the trees. None of them knew what had just happened. But all of them somehow sensed that nothing would ever be the same again. For a long time, neither of them moved. Morning sunlight poured through the cabin windows. Dust drifted lazily in the air. The old rocking chair creaked gently in the breeze. Ethan simply stared. Every memory he had spent years burying, every unanswered question, every lonely birthday, every silent Christmas, they all returned at once. Eleanor remained where she was. She didn't reach for him. She didn't try to explain. She seemed to understand that explanations could wait. Ethan finally found his voice. Barely.
You are alive?
Eleanor smiled sadly.
I am.
Ethan took a slow step forward. Then another. His hands were shaking.
All these years, you were alive?
Eleanor nodded. I was. Silence filled the room again. It lasted only a few seconds. To Ethan, it felt like 20 years. Suddenly, all the questions became one.
Why?
His voice broke, not with anger, with hurt.
Why didn't you come home? Why didn't you tell me? Why did you let me believe he struggled to finish? That I'd lost you?
The words echoed softly through the cabin. Eleanor lowered her eyes. She accepted every one of them. When she finally spoke, her voice remained calm, gentle.
Because I believed losing me was safer than keeping me.
Ethan stared at her. He wanted to understand. He couldn't.
That doesn't make any sense.
Eleanor nodded slowly.
It didn't, not to a little boy.
She looked around the cabin, at the faded quilt, the fireplace, the family photograph.
I told myself, if you grew up hating me, you'd also grow up alive.
Ethan shook his head immediately.
I never hated you?
His answer came without hesitation. Almost instinctively.
I was angry, I was confused, but I never hated you?
For the first time, Eleanor's composure faltered. She looked away. A single tear slipped down her cheek.
I used to wonder, every birthday, whether you still remembered my face.
Ethan quietly laughed through his tears.
I didn't? He smiled sadly. I remembered your voice.
Eleanor closed her eyes. That answer hurt and healed at exactly the same time. She took one careful step closer, still leaving space between them.
I wanted to come back so many times.
She looked directly into Ethan's eyes.
But every time I did, someone would have followed me.
Ethan frowned. Who? Eleanor slowly shook her head. Not yet. You deserve the truth. But you deserve it in the right order. She gently touched the back of the old rocking chair.
I made one promise, only one, and it kept me away from you.
Ethan whispered, to who? Eleanor answered almost immediately.
Emily.
The room became silent once more. Ethan blinked in disbelief.
Emily knew?
Eleanor nodded. She knew everything. Or at least, she smiled faintly. As much as anyone could. Outside, a breeze stirred the leaves, somewhere beyond the cabin. Lucien quietly looked toward the front porch. He still couldn't hear the conversation. But something had changed. The tension that had filled the forest earlier had disappeared. Ava noticed it too.
They're talking.
Lucien smiled softly. They're becoming a family again. Inside the cabin, Ethan slowly looked around the room. His childhood home, his mother's face, Emily's name. Nothing in his life looked the same anymore. And somehow, for the first time in years, that no longer frightened him. The cabin had become strangely peaceful. Not because every question had been answered, because, for the first time, neither Ethan nor Eleanor was hiding behind silence. Sunlight drifted slowly across the old wooden floor. The family photograph still rested on the sofa, The smiling faces inside it belonged to another lifetime. Ethan took a deep breath.
You said you made a promise to Emily?
Eleanor nodded. She walked to the fireplace, resting one hand lightly on the stone mantel.
It was the last promise I ever wanted to make.
She stared quietly into the empty fireplace, as though she could still see the flames that had once warmed the cabin.
Emily came here many times, sometimes with a camera, sometimes with nothing more than a notebook.
Ethan listened in silence. He had never imagined the two women had known each other.
She wasn't afraid of wolves. She was curious.
A faint smile appeared.
The first time we met, she asked if I minded being photographed.
Ethan almost laughed. That sounds like Emily. Eleanor smiled. It does. She continued.
I told her no, so she photographed everything except me. The trees, the river, the cabin, the moon, even my footprints.
Ethan smiled despite himself. He could picture it perfectly. Emily kneeling in the dirt, searching for light, searching for stories. Eleanor's smile slowly faded.
Eventually, she stopped asking about wolves. She started asking about people.
Ethan frowned. What people? Eleanor looked toward the window. Beyond it, the forest stretched endlessly toward Moonlight Creek.
The people who came to the creek at night. The people who believed no one was watching.
A chill passed quietly through the room. Ethan asked softly, was Emily investigating them? Eleanor nodded. She believed something important had been hidden there for a very long time. She looked back at Ethan.
She never wanted to expose anyone. She wanted to understand.
Those words sounded so much like Ava, that Ethan couldn't help thinking how similar the two women really were. Eleanor walked slowly toward the old rocking chair. She rested her fingertips against its worn wooden back.
The last time Emily came here, she wasn't carrying her camera, only a notebook.
Her voice became quieter, almost fragile.
I knew immediately something had changed.
Ethan waited. He sensed that the next memory had remained locked inside his mother for many years. Eleanor closed her eyes. For a brief moment, she wasn't standing in the cabin anymore. She was remembering.
She looked tired, but excited. She said, I finally found the piece that never fit.
Ethan frowned. What piece? Eleanor slowly shook her head.
I asked her the same question. She smiled and told me, not yet.
A sad laugh escaped Eleanor. She wanted to make absolutely certain before she involved anyone else. The room grew quiet again. Eleanor continued.
Before she left, she turned back at the door.
The memory remained perfectly clear, as though it had happened yesterday.
She looked at me and said, if anything happens to me, promise me Ethan never becomes part of this.
Ethan's breathing stopped.
He is still young. He deserves an ordinary life.
A long silence filled the cabin. Eleanor lowered her head.
I promised, and from that day forward, I stayed away.
Tears quietly gathered in her eyes.
I thought if I disappeared, if no one connected our family to Emily, you would be safe.
Ethan slowly sat down on the edge of the old sofa. Every decision that had once seemed unforgivable now carried unbearable weight. His mother hadn't abandoned him. She had sacrificed her place in his life. Because she believed it would protect him. Ethan whispered.
You carried that alone? For all these years?
Eleanor smiled sadly.
It became easier. She paused. Number. That is not true. It never became easier. I simply became better at pretending.
Ethan looked at her. For the first time, he no longer saw the years she had been absent. He saw the years she had been lonely. And suddenly he understood. Not everything, but enough. Enough for the anger to begin quietly giving way to compassion. Neither Ethan nor Eleanor spoke for several minutes. Outside, a gentle breeze carried the scent of pine through the open window. The cabin felt less like a forgotten place now, more like a home that had been patiently waiting for its family to return. Ethan finally broke the silence.
You said Emily came here many times?
Eleanor nodded.
Over nearly 3 years.
Ethan looked surprised. That long? Eleanor smiled softly. Emily never believed difficult questions had quick answers. She walked toward a bookshelf along the far wall. Most of the books had swollen from years of humidity. A few old journals rested neatly between them. She brushed a thin layer of dust from the shelf.
She never arrived with a plan. Only another question.
Ethan could almost picture it. Emily stepping through the cabin door, notebook in one hand, camera hanging from her shoulder. Already noticing details no one else would see, Eleanor laughed quietly.
She asked impossible questions.
Ethan smiled. Like what? Eleanor answered without hesitation.
Why does everyone remember the same story differently? Why are people afraid of places instead of memories? If a secret survives for generations, who is protecting it?
Ethan lowered his eyes. Those didn't sound like questions about monsters. They sounded like questions about people. Eleanor noticed his expression.
That is what made Emily different. She never came looking for a villain. She came looking for the truth.
She paused, then smiled. And sometimes, those are very different things. Ethan thought of Ava. Without realizing it, she had been following exactly the same path. He looked toward his mother.
So Emily wasn't investigating the Wolf family?
Eleanor shook her head. Number she trusted us. In fact, she often asked us to help her. Ethan blinked. Help? Eleanor nodded. We know these woods. We notice when strangers arrive. We remember old trails long after everyone else forgets them. She looked through the cabin window toward the distant forest.
Emily believed the forest remembered everything. She simply needed someone who could read its memories.
Ethan followed her gaze. Outside, ancient oak trees stretched toward the morning sky. Some had stood there for more than a century, quiet witnesses to lives that had come and gone. Eleanor's voice became quieter.
She never asked us to fight. She never asked us to hide evidence. She only asked one thing.
Ethan waited.
If you notice something unusual, tell me before you tell anyone else.
Ethan frowned. Why? Eleanor smiled faintly. Because she wanted to understand it first. She was afraid people would reach conclusions before they reached the truth. A comfortable silence settled over the cabin. Ethan slowly nodded. That sounded exactly like the Emily everyone remembered, patient, thoughtful, never rushing. After a moment, he asked the question that had quietly been growing in his mind.
What was she closest to discovering?
For the first time since revealing herself, Eleanor hesitated. Not because she wished to hide the answer, because even now, the memory unsettled her. She walked slowly to the front window. Sunlight reflected in her golden eyes.
She believed someone had been visiting Moonlight Creek for years. Not every night, not every month, but always for the same reason.
Ethan felt his heartbeat quicken.
Did she know who?
Eleanor slowly turned toward him. Her expression remained calm, but there was unmistakable gravity in her voice.
She thought she did.
Ethan leaned forward, and Eleanor lowered her eyes for only a moment. When she looked up again, she spoke the words she had carried alone for decades.
The night Emily disappeared. I wasn't the last person to see her.
The room became perfectly still.
Who was?
Eleanor took a slow breath, not yet ready to tell the whole story, but finally ready to begin. The cabin felt unusually quiet. Outside, a woodpecker tapped rhythmically somewhere deep in the forest. Inside, neither Ethan nor Eleanor moved. Eleanor slowly pulled one of the old kitchen chairs away from the table. She sat down, not because she was tired, because the story deserved time. Ethan remained standing. His hands rested against the back of another chair. He wasn't sure he was ready for what came next, but he knew he needed to hear it. Eleanor looked toward the open window.
It was a full moon, the same as tonight, northern winds, no rain. I remember every detail.
Her voice was calm, but every word carried the weight of memory.
Emily arrived just before sunset. She wasn't frightened, she was excited.
Ethan frowned, because she'd found something. Eleanor nodded.
She told me everything finally makes sense.
Ethan smiled faintly. That sounds exactly like her. Eleanor returned the smile, only briefly.
I asked her what she'd discovered. She refused to tell me.
She looked down at her hands.
She said, I need one more piece. Just one.
Silence settled over the cabin again. Eleanor continued.
We talked for nearly an hour about photographs, about memories, about the people she cared about.
A faint smile crossed her face.
Before she left, she asked me one strange question.
Ethan waited quietly.
If someone spends years protecting a secret, does that make them guilty?
Ethan slowly shook his head. Number? Eleanor nodded. That was my answer, too. She closed her eyes for a brief moment.
Emily smiled. She looked relieved, as though she had been hoping someone would say exactly that.
Outside, the wind stirred softly through the trees. Eleanor opened her eyes again.
She left the cabin. I watched her walk toward Moonlight Creek.
Ethan leaned forward. What did you do? I waited. I always waited. Emily preferred to work alone when she became certain. Ethan nodded. That matched everything he had learned. Eleanor continued quietly.
Perhaps 20 minutes later, I heard footsteps.
They weren't Emily's. I stepped outside. I stayed hidden among the trees. Her voice became slower, as though she were watching the memory unfold again.
I saw someone walking toward the creek.
Ethan's heartbeat quickened. Who? Eleanor didn't answer immediately. Instead, she described what she had seen.
He walked alone. He wasn't running. He wasn't hiding. He looked, she searched for the right word, thoughtful.
Ethan listened without breathing.
He stopped beside the old bridge. He looked out across the water. He remained there for several minutes.
Eleanor slowly looked up.
Then I realized something.
Ethan whispered, What? Eleanor answered softly.
He had no idea. Emily was following him.
The words hung heavily in the air. Ethan frowned. Following him? Eleanor nodded. I caught sight of Emily. She stayed well behind. Careful, quiet, watching. Ethan struggled to understand. She was following someone, not meeting them. For the first time, Eleanor said firmly, I became certain of it. Emily wasn't keeping an appointment. She was observing. A long silence followed. Finally, Ethan asked the question he had been holding back.
Who was the man?
Eleanor met his eyes. She had carried the answer for decades. Now, she spoke it at last.
Victor Blackwood.
The cabin fell completely silent. Outside, the wind suddenly swept through the pines, as though even the forest remembered that night. The name lingered in the cabin, Victor Blackwood. For several long moments, neither of them spoke. Ethan slowly lowered himself into the chair opposite his mother. His thoughts raced. Victor, the man who had welcomed them into his home, the man Emily had trusted, the man who still carried her memory with quiet devotion. It didn't fit, not at all.
That can't be the whole story.
Eleanor nodded immediately.
It isn't.
Her answer came without hesitation, as though she had expected exactly that reaction. She folded her hands on the old wooden table.
If I had believed Victor meant Emily harm, I would have stopped him.
Ethan looked at her. You were watching. I was, and I saw no fear. The words surprised him.
No fear?
Eleanor slowly shook her head.
Emily was careful, but she wasn't frightened. She was observing.
She looked toward the window again. The forest beyond seemed almost unchanged from that distant night.
Victor crossed the bridge. He walked toward the creek. He stopped several times, as though he were looking for something.
Ethan frowned. What? Eleanor smiled faintly. I never found out. She continued.
He never once looked behind him. Not once. He had no idea Emily was there.
Ethan leaned forward. So Emily chose to follow him. Eleanor nodded. Yes. And that matters. She spoke the last sentence with unusual emphasis.
Emily made that decision. No one forced her.
Silence settled between them. Ethan quietly replayed everything in his mind. Emily had finally found the missing piece. She had left Eleanor's cabin. She had followed Victor. Not because Victor called her, because she believed he would unknowingly lead her somewhere. Ethan finally asked,
Did Victor meet anyone?
Eleanor's expression grew thoughtful. She closed her eyes, searching memories that had remained untouched for decades.
I don't know.
Ethan looked surprised. You lost sight of them. Eleanor nodded slowly.
The forest becomes very dense beyond the creek. There are old cedar trees, large boulders. From where I stood, I couldn't see the riverbank itself.
She paused, then added quietly,
I could only hear the water.
The cabin became silent once more. Ethan asked another question, one he almost feared to hear answered.
Did you hear Emily?
Eleanor closed her eyes. A painful memory crossed her face.
Number, I never heard her scream. I never heard anyone running. I never heard a struggle.
She opened her eyes again.
That is why. I've never believed Emily was attacked there.
Ethan stared at her. What do you mean? Eleanor answered carefully, choosing every word.
I think something happened after they disappeared from my view. Something neither Emily nor Victor expected.
Ethan slowly leaned back. The mystery had shifted again. Victor wasn't waiting for Emily. Emily wasn't meeting Victor. Neither seemed to know the other would be there. Then, something else had happened. Something still hidden by the forest. Eleanor reached into the pocket of her coat. She unfolded a piece of yellowed paper. The edges had become soft with age. She laid it gently on the table. It wasn't a letter. It was a rough hand-drawn map. Moonlight Creek, the old bridge, the abandoned trail. Several landmarks Ethan recognized from childhood. One location had been circled in faded blue ink. Not the bridge, not the creek. A point beyond the eastern bank, hidden among the trees. Ethan looked up.
Emily drew this?
Eleanor nodded.
The morning before she disappeared, she asked me if I'd ever been there.
Ethan studied the map. He slowly shook his head. I've never even noticed that trail. Eleanor smiled sadly. Most people don't. Emily did. She gently touched the faded blue circle.
She believed the answer wasn't at Moonlight Creek. It was on the other side.
Ethan looked down at the map once more. For the first time, he understood why Emily had followed Victor. Not because Victor was the mystery, because Victor might have unknowingly been walking toward it, outside the cabin. The morning had grown warmer. Lucien leaned quietly against an old oak tree. Ava sat on a fallen log nearby. Neither of them spoke. The forest itself seemed unusually calm. Thomas slowly approached from the trail. He glanced toward the cabin.
They've been talking for quite a while.
Lucien nodded. They need the time. Thomas smiled faintly. Some conversations take years to begin. The cabin door finally opened. Ethan stepped outside first. His eyes were still red. But something inside him had changed. The anger he had carried for so many years was gone. Eleanor followed a moment later. She paused on the porch. The sunlight touched her silver hair. For the first time, she no longer looked like a ghost hiding in the forest. She looked like a mother coming home. Ava walked toward Ethan.
Are you all right?
Ethan looked at her. A quiet smile appeared.
I think I finally am.
Ava didn't ask any more questions. She simply hugged him. Lucien looked toward Eleanor. He gave a respectful nod.
Thank you
Eleanor looked surprised. For what?
for trusting us.
Eleanor smiled gently. I think Emily already did. Those words settled softly over the group. Almost everyone smiled. Almost. Ava unfolded the old map Eleanor had given them. Everyone gathered around. The faded blue circle stood out against the yellowed paper.
I don't remember a trail there.
Most people don't. It disappeared years ago.
Lucien studied the map carefully. His expression slowly became serious.
I know this place.
Everyone turned toward him.
You do?
Lucien nodded. There used to be an abandoned stone quarry beyond the eastern ridge. No one goes there anymore. Eleanor looked surprised. You've been there?
Only once. When I was young. My father warned me never to return.
Thomas frowned. He never told us that.
He rarely explained his reasons. He simply said, "Some places belong to memories."
Eleanor quietly repeated the sentence. Some places belong to memories. She looked at the map again. So that is where Emily was trying to go. A thoughtful silence followed. Then Ava looked toward Ethan.
We need to speak with Victor.
No one objected. If Emily had followed Victor that night, then Victor deserved to know. An hour later, Blackwood Manor stood peacefully beneath the afternoon sun. Victor welcomed them into the library with his usual warmth, but his smile faded the moment he saw their faces.
What happened?
Ava placed the old map on the desk, beside it. She laid the family photograph Ethan had found in the cabin.
We found Eleanor.
Victor froze, for only a heartbeat, but everyone noticed.
She is alive.
Eleanor stepped quietly into the room behind the others. Victor slowly stood. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. Then Victor smiled, not with surprise, with relief.
I always hoped you survived.
Eleanor smiled back. So did I. The years between them seemed to disappear. Not because they had been forgotten, because neither of them blamed the other. Ava gently broke the silence.
Eleanor told us something.
Victor looked toward her.
On the night Emily disappeared, you were at Moonlight Creek.
Victor didn't deny it. He slowly nodded.
I was.
The room became perfectly still.
My mother saw you. Emily followed you.
Victor frowned. His expression changed completely.
Emily followed me.
The confusion in his voice was unmistakable. Not fear, not guilt. Confusion. He slowly sat down. His eyes drifted toward the window, searching memories long buried beneath grief.
I never knew.
He spoke almost to himself. I thought I was alone. Silence filled the library. Victor closed his eyes. A faint crease formed across his brow. He pressed one hand against his temple, as though trying to force a forgotten memory back into the light.
There is something.
Everyone leaned forward. Victor opened his eyes slowly.
I've spent 20 years believing it was only a dream.
He looked at each of them in turn, then at the faded blue circle on Emily's map. His voice dropped to almost a whisper.
But perhaps it wasn't.
The library became so quiet that the ticking of the old grandfather clock sounded unusually loud. Victor remained seated. His eyes never left the faded map on the desk. Ava waited patiently. She knew better than to interrupt a memory trying to return. Sometimes the harder someone searched, the farther the answer slipped away. Victor finally spoke.
For years, I convinced myself it was grief, a dream, or perhaps guilt.
He let out a quiet breath.
Now, I am no longer certain.
Lucien folded his arms. What do you remember? Victor closed his eyes, not to hide, to see.
I had been walking beside Moonlight Creek. I wasn't looking for anyone. I simply needed to think.
Thomas nodded quietly. You often walked there.
I still do.
Victor smiled faintly. It was the only place quiet enough after Emily disappeared. He stopped, then shook his head. Number. I walked there even before that. The forgotten pieces were beginning to move, slowly. Carefully, Victor continued.
I crossed the bridge. I remember hearing the water. I remember the wind.
His voice faded. Ava leaned forward slightly, and Victor frowned, as though the next image refused to come into focus.
I remember footsteps.
Everyone exchanged a glance.
Behind you?
Victor nodded. I thought someone was hiking. I never turned around. Eleanor quietly lowered her eyes. That matched exactly what she had witnessed. Victor rubbed his forehead.
Then I saw something.
He opened his eyes. Confusion filled them.
Someone standing across the creek.
Ava asked softly, Emily? Victor slowly shook his head. Number, I don't think so. Lucien spoke for the first time. What did you see? Victor hesitated. He seemed embarrassed by his own answer.
I only remember a silhouette standing perfectly still.
The room remained silent. Victor continued.
I couldn't tell whether it was a man or a woman.
Thomas frowned. Did it move? Victor answered immediately. Number, that is what frightened me. He looked toward the window.
It simply watched.
A cool breeze drifted through the open library window. Even the sunlight suddenly felt quieter. Victor looked back at the group.
I blinked, and it was gone.
Ava asked carefully, what happened next? Victor searched his memory again. This time, the answer came more quickly.
I heard another sound. Not footsteps. Stone.
Lucien looked up immediately. Stone. Victor nodded, like loose rocks sliding down a hillside. Lucien's expression changed, almost instinctively. He turned toward the old map. His finger stopped on the faded blue circle.
The quarry.
Everyone looked at him.
Old quarries always sound like that. Loose gravel, broken limestone. The sound carries much farther than people expect.
Victor stared at Lucien. For a long moment, neither man spoke. Then Victor whispered.
That is it.
His heartbeat quickened. I remember climbing, not intentionally. I simply followed the sound. Ava looked at the map. The blue circle no longer seemed like a possibility. It was becoming a destination. Victor continued.
When I reached the ridge, I thought I heard someone call my name.
Ethan asked, Emily? Victor slowly shook his head. I don't know. The voice was carried away by the wind. I never saw anyone. He lowered his eyes. When I finally returned home, I convinced myself none of it had happened. I told myself grief had invented the entire evening. Eleanor quietly spoke.
It happened.
Victor looked up. Their eyes met across the room.
You weren't imagining it. I saw you. And Emily saw you.
For the first time in more than 20 years, Victor no longer carried the burden of doubting his own memory. The past had not disappeared. It had simply remained unfinished. Ava carefully folded Emily's map. She looked around the room.
Tomorrow morning, we're going to the old quarry.
No one objected. Some answers had waited decades. One more night would not change that. But by tomorrow, they would finally walk the same path Emily had tried to follow. No one hurried to leave. The decision had already been made. At sunrise, they would walk to the abandoned quarry. Victor carefully rolled up Emily's map. His fingers lingered on the faded blue circle. He looked older than he had only an hour earlier. Not weaker, simply freer. The uncertainty he had carried for decades finally had a shape. Thomas stood beside the library fireplace. His eyes rested on one of Emily's framed photographs. Moonlight Creek, bathed in silver light, He smiled quietly.
I think she'd be laughing.
Ava looked up.
Laughing?
Thomas nodded. At all of us. Several people exchanged puzzled glances.
We've spent years trying to solve Emily's mystery, and she'd probably tell us, he smiled, that we've been asking the wrong questions.
Victor chuckled softly. That sounds exactly like Emily. Thomas walked toward one of the bookshelves. He reached behind a row of weathered journals. Hidden there was a small wooden box. Ava's eyes widened. You knew about that? Thomas laughed. I've known for 20 years. I was simply waiting until the right moment. He carefully placed the box on the table. It wasn't locked inside. There were only 3 things: a dried white flower, a fountain pen, and a folded piece of paper. Victor stared at the flower. His voice softened.
I gave her that.
Thomas nodded. I know. He unfolded the paper with extraordinary care. The ink had faded. But Emily's handwriting remained unmistakable. Thomas read aloud. A faint smile spread across the room. Even now, Emily sounded exactly like herself. Lucien lowered his eyes thoughtfully. Thomas continued. Ava felt a chill. She remembered those exact words written beneath one of Emily's photographs. Silence settled over the library. The words seemed directed at every one of them, especially now. Victor quietly laughed.
She never stopped teaching.
Thomas turned the page over. There was only one final sentence, written much smaller than the rest, almost as though Emily had added it at the last moment. No one spoke. The sentence lingered in the room. Ava slowly looked toward Victor, then Eleanor. Neither of them had been hiding the truth for themselves. Both had spent years protecting someone else. Lucien finally broke the silence.
Emily never believed the truth would create enemies. She believed it would heal old wounds.
Thomas smiled proudly. That is exactly why I never destroyed this note. I knew one day you'd understand it. Ava carefully folded the letter. She didn't place it back inside the box. Instead, she slipped it into her journal.
We'll bring her words with us tomorrow.
Outside, the afternoon light had begun to soften. Long shadows stretched across the gardens of Blackwood Manor. Somewhere beyond those hills, the abandoned quarry waited in silence. Not hiding, simply waiting. For the people Emily had trusted to finally arrive. Dawn arrived quietly. A thin layer of mist rested over Moonlight Falls. The streets were still empty. The town had not yet awakened. 2 vehicles left Blackwood Manor just after sunrise. No one spoke much during the drive. Each of them was thinking about Emily, about the path she had walked more than 20 years before. The paved road gradually narrowed. Soon, it became gravel. The trees grew taller, the forest denser. Victor slowed the car.
This road used to lead to the quarry. After it closed, nature slowly reclaimed it.
Lucien looked out the window. He recognized the landscape, not from memory alone, from instinct. The wolves had always avoided this place. After another mile, the road ended. Ahead stood a rusted metal gate, bent with age, almost hidden beneath vines. A weathered wooden sign leaned against one post. Most of its letters had disappeared. Only one word remained readable. Everyone stepped out into the cool morning air. Birdsong echoed through the trees. Otherwise, the forest was silent. Thomas rested one hand against the old gate.
I haven't stood here in 25 years.
Eleanor smiled faintly. Neither have I. Ava unfolded Emily's map. The faded blue circle matched the path beyond the gate almost perfectly.
This is it.
Lucien crouched near the ground. He brushed away leaves covering the trail. Beneath them, old footprints were impossible to find, but something else remained. A narrow stone path, nearly swallowed by moss.
This wasn't built for quarry workers.
Victor looked down. The quarry road was wider. This, he paused, was meant for walking. They followed the narrow trail. Step by step, the forest closed around them. Sunlight filtered through towering oaks. Broken limestone appeared beneath the soil. Small white stones lined the path, like forgotten markers. After several minutes, the trees suddenly opened. Before them stretched an enormous abandoned quarry. Its walls rose like pale cliffs. Layers of limestone glowed softly beneath the morning sun. Nature had slowly reclaimed the place. Young trees grew from cracks in the rock. Wildflowers covered sections of the quarry floor. Rainwater had collected into a clear blue pond below. Peaceful, beautiful. Nothing like the dangerous place everyone had imagined. Ava stood still. She understood immediately why Emily had loved it. It wasn't abandoned. It had simply become quiet. Victor looked around slowly. His breathing changed.
I remember this.
Everyone turned toward him.
I stood. He pointed toward the eastern ridge. There.
Eleanor nodded. That is where I lost sight of you. Victor slowly climbed a few steps along the rocky slope. He stopped exactly where memory told him to stop. He looked across the quarry. Then his expression changed. His eyes settled on something none of the others had noticed. A narrow opening in the limestone wall, almost completely hidden by ivy. Small enough to escape notice, large enough for a person to enter.
That wasn't visible before.
Lucien narrowed his eyes. It wasn't. The vines are younger than the rock. They grew over something. Thomas whispered, "A tunnel?" Lucien nodded slowly. Or an old maintenance passage. Ava unfolded Emily's map again. Her heartbeat quickened. Near the faded blue circle, almost invisible beneath years of wear, was a tiny pencil sketch she hadn't noticed before. Not a circle, not a cross, a small arrow pointing toward the hidden opening. She held the map beside the limestone wall. The direction matched perfectly.
Emily knew.
Ethan stepped closer. You think she came here? Ava nodded. I don't think. She smiled softly. I think she wanted us to. Lucien walked to the entrance. The vines brushed lightly against his shoulders. Cool air drifted from the darkness beyond. Not cold, simply still, as if untouched for decades. He turned back toward the group. A quiet smile appeared.
I think this is where Emily's trail truly begins.
No one moved. No one rushed forward. Emily's final lesson remained fresh in every mind. Together, they stood before the hidden passage. Not as hunters chasing a mystery, but as friends, finally ready to let the truth find them. For several moments, no one crossed the threshold. The opening in the limestone wall stood quietly beneath its curtain of ivy. Cool air drifted outward, carrying the faint scent of damp stone. Not decay, not danger, only age. Lucien stepped forward first. He gently pulled the vines aside. Sunlight slipped into the narrow passage. The stone walls glimmered softly.
The ground is solid. No recent collapse.
Victor looked toward Ava. You should lead. You've been following Emily's trail better than any of us. Ava smiled. I don't think I am leading. She looked down at the map. I think Emily still is. Together, they entered the passage. Their footsteps echoed quietly against the limestone. Drops of water fell somewhere deeper inside. A slow, steady rhythm, almost like the cave itself was breathing. The tunnel was wider than it had first appeared. Old wooden support beams still stood along the walls. Most had weathered surprisingly well. Here and there, rusted mining hooks remained bolted into the rock. Thomas ran his fingers lightly across one.
This place has been untouched for decades.
Lucien shook his head. Not completely. Everyone stopped. Lucien knelt beside the wall. He pointed toward the limestone. Simone had scratched a tiny crescent moon into the rock. Small, neat, almost impossible to notice.
Emily?
Victor leaned closer. His smile appeared almost instantly.
She always drew tiny moons. On notebooks, film canisters, even coffee cups.
Eleanor nodded. I've seen her do it. Ava gently traced the carving with one fingertip. Years had softened its edges, but the lines remained unmistakable.
So she definitely came inside?
Yes, Lucien answered quietly, and she wanted someone to know. They continued deeper. The passage curved gently to the left. The air grew cooler. Yet the floor remained surprisingly clean. No fallen rocks, no thick layers of debris. Almost as though someone had cared for the tunnel long ago. Several minutes later, the tunnel widened into a small stone chamber. Sunlight filtered through a narrow crack high above. Golden beams illuminated floating dust. The room felt strangely peaceful. Ava slowly turned in a circle. Nothing appeared unusual. No boxes, no machinery, no hidden door, only stone. Then Ethan noticed something.
Wait!
He pointed toward one wall. They're about shoulder height. Another tiny crescent moon had been carved into the limestone, but beside it, there was something new. 3 short lines, almost like arrows pointing downward. Victor stepped closer. His heartbeat quickened.
Emily never repeated symbols, without a reason.
Thomas examined the wall carefully. It is deliberate. She wanted someone to stop here. Lucien crouched near the base of the wall. His hand brushed away decades of dust. The limestone beneath looked slightly different. Smoother, less weathered. He tapped it gently. The sound echoed differently. Not solid, hollow.
There is space behind this wall.
Everyone looked at one another. Ava felt her pulse quicken. She wasn't excited because they had found something. She was excited because Emily had trusted someone would. Lucien searched the surrounding stone with careful hands. No switches, no handles. Nothing obvious. Exactly the kind of puzzle Emily would appreciate? Then Eleanor quietly laughed. Everyone turned toward her.
I know why I never noticed.
She smiled at the carved moon, because Emily never wanted people looking at the wall. She wanted them looking at the floor. Ava immediately lowered her gaze. The dusty stone floor seemed ordinary, until the sunlight shifted. One narrow limestone slab reflected the light differently. Not brighter, simply smother, as though countless footsteps had once crossed only that single stone. Lucien walked over slowly. He rested one foot upon it. Nothing happened. He pressed a little harder. A quiet, almost imperceptible click echoed through the chamber. No one breathed. Somewhere behind the limestone wall, ancient gears groaned softly. Stone rubbed against stone. Slowly, very slowly, the hidden wall began to move. A cool current of untouched air drifted into the chamber. Beyond the opening, only darkness waited. And somewhere within that darkness, Emily's final secret had been waiting for more than 20 years. The stone doorway opened only wide enough for one person at a time. No one stepped forward immediately. The silence inside was different from the tunnel. Older, almost undisturbed. Lucien lifted his flashlight. A narrow beam of light disappeared into the darkness. No movement. No sound. Only rows of limestone disappearing into shadow.
It is safe. I'll go first.
Ava smiled. And I am right behind you. Together, they entered the hidden chamber. The others followed quietly. The room was surprisingly small, almost perfectly square. The ceiling arched naturally overhead. Water had polished the limestone smooth over countless years. There were no machines, no cratesies, no signs that anyone had lived there. Only a feeling that someone had once paused here, long enough to think. Victor slowly turned in place. His breathing became uneven.
I've been here.
Everyone looked at him.
You remember?
Victor nodded slowly, only pieces. I thought they were dreams. He walked toward the center of the chamber almost instinctively, then stopped, exactly in the middle. His expression changed.
This is where I heard the voice.
The room fell silent.
What did it say?
Victor closed his eyes for several long seconds. Nothing came. Then, almost as a whisper,
Don't forget.
he opened his eyes again. I don't know whose voice it was. But those 2 words, I've heard them in my dreams ever since. Ava looked thoughtfully around the chamber. Emily had never written those words anywhere, which meant Victor could not have remembered them from her notes. Thomas wandered toward the far wall. Something caught his attention. Not a carving. Not a symbol. A tiny brass nail protruding from the limestone. Strange, completely out of place.
Come look at this.
Everyone gathered around. The nail was old, darkened with age. Yet it had clearly been placed there by human hands. Eleanor frowned. This wasn't part of the quarry. Lucien gently examined the surrounding stone. He smiled. Someone hung something here. Victor looked puzzled. But what? Ava noticed faint scratches beneath the nail. Rectangular, as though a small wooden frame had rested against the wall for years. Her heartbeat quickened.
There used to be a picture here.
Thomas nodded. Or a map. Something framed. Victor stared silently at the empty wall. His expression became distant.
I remember.
Everyone waited.
There was something hanging here. I couldn't see it clearly. The light, it was too dark.
He frowned. But I remember reaching toward it. Eleanor asked quietly, and then Victor slowly shook his head. Nothing. Everything after that is blank. The mystery deepened. Emily had discovered this hidden chamber. Simone had removed whatever once hung upon the wall, long before today. Then Ethan noticed something near the floor, half hidden beneath loose gravel. A tiny object reflected the flashlight. He bent down, carefully picked it up. It was no larger than a coin, a weathered metal camera shutter button, still attached to a broken threaded collar. Victor immediately recognized it.
That is from Emily's Leica.
Ava looked at him. You are certain? Victor smiled sadly. I bought that camera with her. She refused every newer model, she said. He laughed quietly. The best camera is the one that already knows your hands. Everyone smiled. It sounded exactly like Emily. Ava gently turned the tiny metal piece over in her palm, on its underside, barely visible beneath years of wear. Emily had scratched another crescent moon. Below it, only 2 tiny letters. Ethan frowned. Ebb? Thomas quietly repeated the initials. Ebb. No one recognized them, except Victor. His eyes widened. Almost imperceptibly, he whispered to himself.
It couldn't be.
Ava looked up immediately. You know those initials. Victor remained silent. His gaze never left the broken shutter button. Finally, he spoke, softly, almost unwillingly.
I knew someone. A very long time ago.
He slowly lifted his eyes. They were the last person Emily wanted to interview. The room became perfectly still, not because another answer had appeared, but because, for the first time, a new name had entered the story. One Emily had never written down, one Victor had never spoken aloud. Until now, no one spoke. The tiny shutter button rested quietly in Ava's palm. Its scratched crescent moon caught the beam of Lucien's flashlight. Below it, 2 faded initials. Victor continued staring at them, as though they belonged to another lifetime.
Who was Ebb?
Victor didn't answer immediately. He walked slowly around the chamber. His fingertips brushed lightly across the limestone wall. Almost unconsciously, he stopped beneath the old brass nail, exactly where the missing frame had once hung.
Edmund Brooks.
The name meant nothing to Ava. Nothing to Ethan. Nothing to Lucien. Only Thomas slowly nodded.
I remember hearing that name once.
Victor smiled faintly. He never wanted anyone to remember it. He looked toward the ceiling, recalling a distant memory.
Edmund was the last caretaker of this quarry. When the mine closed, he refused to leave.
Eleanor frowned. I thought he moved away. Victor shook his head. He simply disappeared from everyone's conversations. He smiled sadly, exactly the way he preferred. Ava listened carefully. Emily had never written his name, not once, which meant she had hidden it deliberately.
Did Emily know him?
Victor nodded. They met several times, always briefly. He chuckled softly. Edmund disliked questions. Emily collected them. Even Ethan smiled. He could picture that conversation perfectly. Victor continued.
She told me. He knows something. He simply hasn't decided whether it is safe to tell anyone.
Lucien folded his arms, so Emily earned his trust. Victor looked at the broken shutter button again. I think she did. Thomas glanced around the chamber. If Edmund spent time here, he must have left something. Everyone instinctively began searching, not hurriedly, patiently, the way Emily would have. Lucien examined the walls. Eleanor studied the floor. Victor searched the corners. Ava remained where she was, looking not at the room, but at Emily's tiny crescent moon. Then she noticed something. The moon wasn't centered beneath the brass nail. It leaned slightly to one side, as though Emily had carved it while looking toward something. Not marking the wall, but indicating a direction.
Wait.
Everyone turned. She pointed toward the carving.
Emily wasn't labeling this wall. She was pointing.
Lucien stepped beside her. He followed the angle of the crescent. Across the chamber, toward the opposite corner. There, almost hidden beneath years of fallen limestone, rested an old wooden bench. Its legs had nearly disappeared beneath dust. Thomas smiled. I almost walked past it. Together, they carefully brushed away the loose stone. The bench was surprisingly well preserved, simple, handmade, its surface polished smooth by years of use. Victor ran his fingers gently across the wood. His expression softened.
Edmund built this.
Eleanor looked surprised. You remember? Victor nodded. He believed every beautiful place deserved somewhere to sit. Ava smiled. That sounds like Emily. Victor laughed quietly. That is why they became friends. Lucien crouched beside the bench. Something about it seemed unusual. The front leg was shorter than the others. Not broken. Designed that way. He pressed gently against the seat. The bench shifted almost imperceptibly. A hollow sound echoed beneath it. Everyone froze. Lucien looked up.
There is space underneath.
Victor slowly knelt beside him. Together, they lifted one end of the old bench. Hidden beneath it, protected from light, rain, and time, lay a small metal box. Its surface was covered with dust, yet the latch remained intact. No rust, no damage. As though someone had intended for it to be found one day. Ava's heartbeat quickened. No one reached for the box, not immediately. Emily had taught them better than that. First, observe. Then, understand. Only then, open what had been waiting. Sunlight slipped through the crack in the ceiling. One narrow beam landed softly across the lid. There, almost invisible beneath decades of dust, Simona had scratched another tiny crescent moon, and beneath it, one familiar sentence, in Emily's unmistakable handwriting. For a long moment, no one touched the metal box. Dust shimmered in the beam of sunlight above it. The tiny crescent moon carved into the lid seemed almost alive, waiting, just as Emily had intended. Ava looked around the chamber.
I think Emily wanted all of us here.
Victor smiled softly. Not one person. Everyone? Thomas nodded. That is exactly how she worked. Every person noticed something different. No one ever solved a mystery alone. Lucien carefully lifted the box from beneath the bench. Despite its age, it wasn't heavy. He placed it gently on the stone floor. The old latch had no lock, only years of dust. He looked toward Ava.
You should open it.
Ava hesitated, then slowly released the latch. The tiny metal clasp clicked, a quiet sound, barely louder than a heartbeat. The lid rose easily. No one breathed. Inside, there was no treasure, no jewelry, no hidden fortune, only carefully arranged memories. On top rested a small envelope. Across the front, Emily's familiar handwriting. Beneath it lay several objects. A roll of undeveloped black and white film, a weathered leather notebook, a brass compass, and a dried white wildflower pressed between two sheets of wax paper. Victor picked up the flower with extraordinary care. He smiled before anyone asked.
Queen Anne's lace. Emily's favorite.
Eleanor laughed quietly. She used to tuck one into every notebook she carried. Ava gently lifted the brass compass. Its needle still moved, slowly, steadily, until it pointed north. Then, without warning, it drifted several degrees east. Ethan frowned. Is it broken? Lucien shook his head. He looked toward the limestone wall. There is a large amount of iron somewhere nearby. Thomas smiled. Emily noticed that. He pointed toward a note tied to the compass with faded blue thread. Ava unfolded it. Only one sentence. She laughed softly. That sounds like advice. Victor smiled. It always was. Ava carefully returned the note to the box, then reached for the leather notebook. The cover had darkened with age. Its corners were worn smooth. She opened it. Every page was blank. Almost. At the bottom of each page, Emily had written the date, nothing more. No observations, no sketches, no names. Ethan looked puzzled. Why would she leave an empty notebook? Thomas answered before anyone else could. Because she expected someone else to finish the story. Silence settled over the chamber. Ava slowly closed the notebook. The empty pages suddenly felt heavier than any written journal. Finally, she picked up the envelope. It was sealed with faded blue wax. The crescent moon had been pressed into it while the wax was still warm. Victor's eyes softened. I remember that seal. I carved it for her. Ava turned the envelope over. There was one line on the back, written smaller than the address. No one spoke. The sentence hung in the air. They had learned that Victor had come to the quarry. They had learned Emily had followed him. But they still didn't know why Victor had come. Ava gently placed the unopened envelope back inside the box.
We're not opening it?
She slowly shook her head.
Not yet. If we read it now, we'll be asking Emily to give us the answer.
She smiled. And after everything she has taught us, I think she'd rather we earn it. Lucien looked around the hidden chamber one final time. His eyes rested on the old bench, the brass nail, the faded crescent moons, the forgotten years. Then he quietly spoke.
We haven't reached the end. He looked toward the dark passage beyond the chamber. We've only reached the place where Emily stopped walking.
And somewhere beyond that point, the rest of the journey was waiting for them. No one reached for the sealed envelope again. Instead, they quietly packed everything back into the metal box. The notebook, the compass, the flower, the undeveloped roll of film. Each object seemed less like evidence, and more like a conversation Emily had started years ago. Victor remained standing before the empty wall. His hand rested lightly against the cool limestone. He hadn't moved for several minutes.
Victor.
He looked over his shoulder.
The envelope says we should understand why you came here. We don't. Can you help us?
Victor smiled apologetically. I wish I could. I've been asking myself that same question for 23 years. Thomas spoke quietly. Then don't try to remember the whole day. Remember the beginning. Why did you leave the house? Victor closed his eyes, not searching. Simply allowing the memories to return. Seconds passed. Then a minute. No one interrupted. Finally, Victor laughed softly, almost in disbelief.
It wasn't Emily.
Everyone looked at him.
I didn't leave because of Emily. I left because of a letter.
Ava's eyes widened. A letter? Victor nodded slowly. I received it that morning. No signature. No return address. What did it say? Lucien asked. Victor frowned. Only fragments remained.
It asked me to come alone. To the quarry, it said. He searched for the exact words. There is something that belongs to you.
Silence settled across the chamber. Victor continued. I almost ignored it. But a faint smile crossed his face. I was curious. And curiosity was always Emily's favorite excuse. Even Ava couldn't help smiling. Victor looked toward the hidden doorway. I thought someone had found one of Emily's old photographs. Or perhaps a camera she'd misplaced. I never imagined anything more. Eleanor folded her arms thoughtfully. So whoever wrote the letter expected you to come. Victor nodded. Yes. Ethan looked at Ava. So Emily wasn't following Victor. She was following. He paused. The letter. Ava slowly nodded. I think she discovered it. Or discovered who sent it, Thomas added quietly. And she believed it would finally answer every question. The pieces shifted once again. Not into certainty, but into something closer. Emily hadn't been investigating Victor. Victor had become part of someone else's plan. Lucien looked around the chamber one more time. His gaze stopped on the old brass nail, then the bench, then the doorway. Everything felt intentional, prepared, patient. He spoke almost to himself.
This room wasn't hiding from people. It was waiting for the right people.
Victor slowly reached into the inside pocket of his jacket. Everyone looked up. He removed an old leather wallet, worn smooth with age, from inside. He carefully unfolded a yellowed piece of paper. Its edges had nearly crumbled.
You still have it?
Victor smiled sheepishly. I don't throw important things away. He handed the paper to Ava. The handwriting was unfamiliar, neat, deliberate. Without a signature, the ink had faded, but the message was still readable. Ava read the final line twice, then looked up.
This wasn't written to frighten you.
Victor nodded. It was written by someone who knew us. Someone who knew Emily. Lucien looked toward the unopened envelope resting inside the metal box. Then back at the letter, 2 messages. Separated by more than 20 years. Yet somehow, they felt like parts of the same conversation. A quiet smile appeared on Ava's face. For the first time, she felt they were no longer chasing scattered clues. They were following a path that Emily herself had carefully arranged. One step, one memory, one untruth at a time, and just ahead. One final question remained. Who had sent Victor to the quarry? And what was he supposed to find? The hidden chamber grew quiet once again. Victor's letter rested beside the unopened envelope. 2 messages, written decades apart, one inviting Victor into the quarry. The other, waiting until the right moment to be opened. Ava looked from one letter to the other. Something still refused to fit. Not a missing clue, a contradiction. She slowly looked toward Victor.
May I ask you one more question?
Victor nodded. Of course.
When you came here, did you find what the letter promised?
Victor answered without hesitation. I found nothing. Ava frowned. Nothing at all?
Nothing. I searched for nearly an hour. I remember calling out. I even thought someone was playing a cruel joke.
Lucien quietly looked toward the empty wall. then toward the metal box. His eyes slowly narrowed.
That is impossible.
Everyone turned.
What is?
Lucien spoke calmly. If Emily found this chamber and Victor reached this chamber, then why didn't he find the box? Silence. The question landed heavily. Victor slowly looked down at the bench, then back toward the limestone wall. His breathing became slower.
Because it wasn't here.
Thomas nodded almost immediately. Exactly. He gently tapped the lid of the metal box.
Someone placed this here, after Victor left.
Eleanor's eyes widened. And after Emily disappeared, the realization spread through the room. Emily hadn't hidden the box. Someone else had. Someone who knew where she had been. Someone who wanted the truth preserved, but not discovered too soon. Ava looked again at the sealed envelope. Its instructions suddenly made perfect sense. Emily had known, without that answer. Everything else would be misunderstood. Victor gave a quiet smile, I think. We've earned it. No one disagreed. Ava carefully lifted the envelope. The blue wax seal had become brittle with age. She hesitated for only a moment, then gently broke it. The tiny crescent moon split cleanly in two. Inside, there was only a single folded sheet. No photographs, no maps, no names, just Emily's handwriting. Steady, warm, unmistakably hers. Ava began to read aloud. Victor quietly smiled through moist eyes. That sounds like her. Ava continued. Everyone listened without moving. A gentle breeze drifted through the opening above. The pages fluttered softly. Ethan looked up. The photograph? Victor frowned. Which photograph? Ava turned to the final paragraph. Her voice grew quieter, almost reverent. That was all. No signature. No explanation. Just 3 final words beneath the last line, written smaller than the rest, almost like a whisper carried through time. The chamber fell completely silent. Victor slowly reached into his jacket. From an inner pocket, he removed the photograph that had never left him. The one he had carried, every day, for more than 20 years. He turned it over. For the first time, they noticed something none of them had ever seen before. Faint writing hidden beneath the aging backing paper. Not enough to read.